right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Sorry about the last minute nature of this event. Some of you might be wondering, wow, I only heard about this last week. Well, it's because we only sent it last week. But there's a good reason. We have been long awaiting some of the programs we expected this year as things started to focus on growth and reopening and everything else. And one of those did launch just recently. Minister Joly announced it. And when that happened, Laura Chan and I started chatting, and we wanted to get this information out to companies as soon as possible because the federal government is obviously very much focused on the clean tech agenda and reducing emissions. So, yeah, it was definitely a bit of a rush, but by the number of registrations, it certainly is of interest to folks. So, thank you for joining us. Before I go any further, I wanted to do a quick land acknowledgement that CleanTech North and myself in particular. I am on the traditional territory of many nations, the Mississaugas and the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the peoples. Is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Highly recommend that you check out the nativeland.ca website. With that, I'd like to go into our agenda. I'm going to hear from Tafa Swann from Swann Law, which is our newest partner, Laura Chan from the Jobs and Growth Fund from FedDev, and Lynn Cote from EDC. And we're actually going to invert the last two just before, so that Lynn is before Laura, just because of some time constraints. And before we do that, I would like to thank our current partners, Flow Ventures, Export Development Canada, Swann Law, the City of Toronto and the Startup Here program, the Centre for Social Innovation, Climate Ventures program, and the Canadian Open Data Society, which is lending us their infrastructure for this. I think I've gone over all this, but we are recording. Please mute yourself. And any questions, put them in the chat. We'll try to address them on the FIFO method, first in, first out. And we'll try to get in as many as we can before we run out of time. With that, I wanted to welcome Tafa Swann, who is our newest partner here at CleanTech North. And she is the founding partner of Swann Law, which is an employment and labor law firm. And with that, Tafa, would you like to say a few things about what you're up to?
Thanks, Brian. I'm happy to meet the CleanTech team and just want to tell you a little bit about myself and my firm and what I can offer CleanTech members. A little bit about me. I've been doing HR law for 10 years, started at the Bay Street corporate firm serving businesses, doing all the employment related due diligence for mergers, acquisitions, doing employer policies, the whole gambit. And then I moved over to a boutique litigation firm for the last 7 years, doing roughly the same thing, but also helping individuals, like individual executives on the other side, looking at employment offers, incentive plans, and all of the issues that come with changes of control and funding and restructuring issues. And now I have started my own law firm, Swann Law, and I continue to do HR work, helping businesses and executives with any kind of HR legal issue they might encounter. And that covers a lot of areas, really, from basic employment and policy packages for startups to start off right with sort of all the bits and pieces you need as you scale up, from just founders to then hiring more and more staff, getting HR and really growing, to putting together executive compensation packages to retain top talent, especially during transitions. And of course, COVID-related questions, which is often the topic of the day. Return to work is in everyone's minds these days, and mandatory vaccination is the fun one that everyone likes to talk about. Outside of work, at work, everywhere. But an example that I thought might be relevant to CleanTech members that I did recently is helping a medical technology company. The founders of the company need to get full employment contracts in place for themselves and their executive team, never having had like these kinds of agreements before, because they want to secure funding from private equity. So similar, frequent kind of issues. The investor wants certainty, standardization, defined terms of work, like full-time and attention for the founders, not running 3 companies at the same time, some certainty as to the dedication of the company. Vacations, you probably know, founders, if they take them at all, they don't track their vacations. And structured compensation, predictable compensation for founders year after year, long-term incentives, and of course the inevitable severance package that no founder necessarily wants to think about. What happens if there's a change of control, or they need to change the position, or they don't want to be there anymore? How do they get a good severance package completely apart from whatever ownership interest they might have? They are now an employee of the company, or expected to be an employee of the company if they're holding an executive position. And of course, what do founders want? Well, they want the funding. So they want to give investors what they're looking for so they can get the funding, grow the business, but they want protections too against termination, being ousted from their executive role, or being put into a different roles as the needs change and the will of the private equity firm starts to govern and have a little more control. And we try to figure out what works for founders. How can we get them all these protections, but still make it acceptable to the investors? So this is some of the work I do, and I try to bring value to companies and executives going through funding rounds and really restructuring at any time. So that is what I do.
Great. Thank you. Well, Tatha, thanks. You've had to suffer my strange questions about due diligence and investors and companies as I've tried to help companies over the years. So with all the work that's going on in clean tech around funding right now, and sort of the maelstrom that's going on in this space, there's a lot of that sort of there's a lot of those sorts of questions. So I think we'll probably be drawing on your knowledge fairly frequently over the next little bit, as the positive news of people actually investing in clean tech hopefully continues. So thank you very much. Perfect. And then, yeah, I did flip things around here. So Lynn, I would invite you to give us a little bit of an update of what's going on at EDC. And I've got the other slide after yours if you want.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian, and happy to be here. Thank you for accommodating. Full disclosure, it's my daughter's prom today, the much anticipated, much canceled prom, and she's having a hair emergency, and all of a sudden I've become useful again. So thank you for accommodating. I just wanted to spend a few minutes on just a quick program review from EDC. So last year, in the middle of COVID, we put together what we call the CleanTech Matching Program, which was an equity program where EDC would come in and match with a private sector investor. And I'm happy to say that that has been extended to December 31st of this year. So it was very successful. We did 16 investments last year. We've done a few more this year as well. And so, we're looking for more. The door is certainly open, but I mean, it is definitely closing on December 31st. We extended it, whereas some of the others haven't, because we're looking at putting together a different type of program that will take all the good things from the matching program, but also turn it into something that is manageable, because of course each one of our direct investments means that now we are sitting on boards either as observers or participants, and it starts to get a little heavy. So but there's been a lot of good learnings and a lot of good collaboration with the venture capital companies out there. And on that vein, we will be announcing shortly some investments that we've made into some of the clean tech funds in order to increase our reach. Because again, there's from a capacity perspective, we have limits on how many companies we can manage. So if you have any questions on that, feel free to reach out. The rest of our programs, whether it's our direct loans, loan guarantees, project finance, we're always looking for project finance, shovel-ready projects. Bonding, credit insurance are still all open as they always have been. And for CleanTech, we take a sort of different look at risk. We're prepared to do more under the right conditions for CleanTech companies. And finally, I just wanted to talk about something we do once a year, which is CleanTech Export Week. It's usually the first week of November. We're doing it a week early this year because the COP26 is happening the first week in November, and we thought, we don't want to really compete with that. And there'd be some people that may not be available. So we've sent out a couple of batches of save the dates for the event. And the event will be a 2-day, 2 afternoons, October 25th and 26th. It'll be very much focused on themes on transition, energy transition, net zero. We'll have a pitch contest again this year. If you'd like to be added to receive the save the date and then also be added to the list so that you get the invitation directly, please send me your company name, your full address, your name, position, and your email, and we'll make sure that we get you added to the list so that there are no limitations. It'll be virtual. It's not a hybrid event. There'll be lots of content, additional content that will be happening in the app. We're using the Whova, whatever, WHOVA, I never say it right, and I never say it consistently wrong twice in a row. Lots of some interesting content. Our partners will be there. So for example, SCTC will be hosting a session. We're going to have a Meet the Experts session. So if you want to talk to someone from our equity team, from our project finance team. So lots of cool content, both live and through the app. And really that's it for me. Thank you very much, Brian, for the opportunity. And if you have questions about EDC in general, what does EDC do for clean tech companies, or you've got a question, I'm happy to take them. And if I can help you, then we're good. If I need to pass you on to one of our team members who manages accounts, I'm happy to do that as well.
Great, Lynn. Thank you very much. If you haven't been to CleanTech Expert Week, honestly, it was always the highlight of my year in person, and even virtually last year. I was amazed at how engaged I actually was because I was pretty much zoomed out by that point, and you brought me back. So thank you very much. And for those that do know me and how long my hair is, totally understand a hair emergency. Please, with our blessings, go and make sure that she has the best prom ever, and we'll try to address any questions that there might be.
Yeah, and feel free to send them my way. And yeah, after the year the kids have had, it's been a tough one, I think, for all of us on so many levels. And I figure, this is the one thing I couldn't do a lot about, but I can do something about the hair, or at least try.
Perfect.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Lynn. All right. And moving on, we're going to move over to Laura Chan now. And Laura has been at FedDev, I won't say how long, but she is very knowledgeable about the programs. And we've had the pleasure, both Paul and I, of working with Laura for many years on many iterations of the FedDev programming. And as I say, when this program came out, we connected, and it was a no-brainer to try and do an info session on this. So with that, Laura, I've got your slides queued up, so you just say next slide and I will click the button.
Great. Thanks, Brian, and thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Chan. I'm a manager of business development at FedDev Ontario. I speak to you from Oakville, Ontario, traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. I'll be making a presentation on this newly launched Jobs and Growth Fund in English. But if you would like, we have material in French as well. You can message Brian. He can provide you with both presentations in English and French. With me here today from FedDev is also Eva Myernikova. She's a business development officer, and she's FedDev's CleanTech lead. Both her and I are happy to answer any questions and also post meeting as well. Okay, so next slide. Okay. So, as you may know, FedDev Ontario is one of the 6, soon 7 regional development agencies. Our mandate is focusing on Southern Ontario, spanning from Ottawa to the east and Windsor to the west. In Northern Ontario, there is a separate agency called FedDev North. Essentially, we all have the same programming, and that's one of the new mandates from our government, that all the RDAs align our programming. So what you see at FedDev will be available at FedDev North and across the country as well, with some regional differences. Now, FedDev was created in 2009 to address key economic challenges that was facing Southern Ontario at the time. As Brian has noted, our minister is Minister Mélanie Joly, Minister of Economic Development and Official Languages. And we are part of the ISED family. FedDev is headquartered in Waterloo and has offices in Toronto, Peterborough, and Ottawa. You may know FedDev as an accelerated growth service partner, supporting business growth with our partners, including Innovation Canada, BTC, EDC, IRAP, Global Affairs, or Trade Commissioner Services. You may also already know us as a co-investor through our core 3 streams of core programming, the business scale-up and productivity stream, the regional innovation ecosystem stream, and the community economic development and diversification stream, where we co-invest in strategic projects that support growth and stimulate the economy. So we play different roles here, and we have a core programming, but today's focus is on a new program that is that has a set period. Next slide, please. Okay, so the Jobs and Growth Funds, very exciting, very exciting. It was just launched in July, a few weeks ago. It's a national program, $700 million over 3 years, and delivered through all the RDAs. And this is to support regional job creation and position local economies for long-term growth. With the fund, we also have a separate 10% or $70 million set aside, dedicated to businesses that were created after January 2020 that meet eligibility criteria. What we found that is that a lot of newer businesses kind of fell through the crack last year because they were not eligible to receive funding through a lot of the government programming, and they were really struggling. So with a recovery program like the Jobs and Growth Fund, we want to ensure that we are kind of equipped to make sure that we take care of, we're able to take care of newer businesses that can show that they have market traction, maybe viability or investor support. So we get a lot of questions on the new business part, like, is there a revenue, minimum revenue? Not necessarily. Well, we recognize that newer businesses don't necessarily be able to generate revenue at this point in 2021. But we do look for companies that have kind of potential, and maybe those newer companies can show us that they have customer orders or pilots with trials and pilots with clients that kind of show us that there's market traction for whatever that company is doing. Now, the Jobs and Growth Fund the focus is to help future-proof businesses build resiliency against future shocks and catalyze growth by, and we have listed here 4 main objectives: transitioning to a green economy, and that's very broad here. For fostering an inclusive recovery, you find that a lot of Government of Canada programming has its focus, inclusive recovery or inclusive growth. Enhancing competitiveness and creating jobs and enhancing resiliency. This will include a focus on key sectors, including manufacturing, clean technology, digital technology, and other areas of economic strength through market expansion, investments in technology and innovation, and strengthening vital production capacity. Okay, next slide. So who's eligible? Very wide program. the three categories, two main categories of eligible applicants: businesses and not-for-profit organizations. We also highly encourage Indigenous-led organizations and or businesses to apply as well. Next slide. This is an important slide, funding terms.
Yep.
The maximum funding for each project could be up to $10 million. There's no minimum for this program. Granted, that's if you're familiar with FedDev programming, if you're asking for a small dollar amount, you still have to put in a lot of work. So make sure that your project is sizable and the ask is worthwhile for you to put in the work to apply. We encourage each applicant to submit only one application for consideration. If you have plans for multiple projects, we would ask that you prioritize and submit one application only. As the program is 3 years, projects do need to be completed on March 31st, 2024. That's the sunset date for the program. For this program, the one difference is that the earliest eligibility cost date is April 19, which means that if you send an application today, the eligibility cost date could be brought back to April 19th. So if you have incurred costs before you apply, we can count towards up to April 19th onwards, or no earlier than 12 months before your application date. Let's see. Now, if you start spending, you can start project activities and start spending on the project before a funding decision is made. Now, this is at your own risk, okay? So you control the pace of, you don't want to stop your business activities while you're applying for FedDev funding and waiting for a decision. But how fast and how slow you spend is up to you, because it is at your own risk. Funding support to businesses can be up to 50% of eligible costs. For businesses, contributions are repayable and interest-free. We also don't take security. The business ability to repay the contribution is a factor in our consideration. Contributions to not-for-profits are non-repayable, and funding support can be up to 90%. For NFPs, the redistribution of contribution to businesses to undertake eligible project activities are allowed in this program. This is known as the third-party delivery model. Funding support to Indigenous businesses and organizations can be up to 100%. Once your application is approved, funding is dispersed through a reimbursement process. So for businesses, it is very important that you secure your sources of financing for the project before you apply, as the reimbursement of costs could typically be 3 to 4 months after you have already incurred and paid for the expenses, and that may have a cash flow implication on your business operations. Now, once a project is completed, we typically provide a 1-year grace period for repayment. So after the 1-year grace period, you will start the repayment term. At the contracting stage, if your project is approved, we will work with you to determine a suitable repayment term, which could range between 4 to 8 years. So we're really depending on the business case and the projections that each company would tailor to your needs. It could be a straight amortization, or it could be a step-up payments, where especially if you're commercializing a new innovation, we could take in a smaller payment amount at the beginning and increase the payment amount at later years. So those are options that we could work around with you. Okay, next slide. So now over the next 2 slides, I'm going to go over examples of eligible project activities, which are grouped under the 4 objectives of the Jobs and Growth Fund. As I mentioned before, a strong project would meet one or more of the program objectives and create sustainable high-value jobs, as well as contribute to business or community resilience. Now, supporting the transition to green economy, we're looking at development of clean technology or adoption of clean technology. So with the CleanTech North audience, you probably have more of a developer of clean technologies than the adoption side. But we have seen a lot of industry adoption of cleaner technology, if you will, in the past as well. For the adoption side, we do look for the applicant to demonstrate, to quantify what is the GHG reduction or the reduction of waste, something we look for demonstrable results. So that could this could also include activities that contribute to a circular economy. So as I said, in the last year or two, we've seen a lot more manufacturers now that submit projects that include adoption of manufacturing processes or technologies that really significantly improve their environmental performance while fostering productivity, growth, and our competitiveness. So those are kind of like, it's very broad, but we do look for metrics that could support, our investment in those kind of projects. Inclusive growth. As I've mentioned before, it is a priority for the Government of Canada. Last year, we have launched a 50-30 challenge to encourage workforce diversity. To date, more than 1,300 organizations have signed up to participate in this challenge. As a participant, you also get access to toolkits so that you can kind of develop or implement your workplace diversity plan. Under the Inclusive Recovery objective, we are looking for projects that will support the growth of businesses that are owned or majority led by underrepresented groups, as well as project activities that would increase the participation of underrepresented groups in the economy. So for example, if a project is going to create a lot of jobs, and those jobs, for those jobs, there's a commitment to hire underrepresented groups, that's a plus for us. That's the kind of commitment we look for in those kind of projects. Moving on. Okay, on this slide, these project activities basically would preserve Canada's competitiveness and future-proof businesses from a future pandemic or other external disruptions. There are many ways to enhance competitiveness. This program supports digital adoption and automation. A lot of project activities could include development or adoption of digital and technological solutions to increase and promote business productivity. This includes Industry 4.0 solutions, and investment in technologies that can help scale businesses, enhance their capabilities, and increase resilience. If you're as a small, medium-sized business looking for general digital adoption support, this is not the program for you. There is another program under ISET called the Canada Digital Adoption Program that's going to be launched shortly. That will support more general SME digital adoption. The Jobs and Growth Fund is looking for larger scale projects that support businesses to upgrade and transform. Strengthening capacity in sectors critical to Canada's recovery and growth. There are two ways of looking at this here. Nationally, across Canada, we are looking at specifically biomanufacturing, food production, and medical supplies. Regionally, within Southern Ontario, we look to support business scale-up and market expansion activities that bolster traditional areas of strength. Here in Southern Ontario, we have a lot of sectors that are globally integrated and economically important to us. These are automotive, life sciences, ICT, aerospace, financial services, and food and beverage processing. We are also looking at project activities that develop emerging areas of global competitive advantage. Again, through some of our past research, we have identified that we have emerging technology clusters in AI, for example, AI machine learning, biotech, biopharma, bioprocessing, cybersecurity, fintech, health informatics, Internet of Things, next generation networks, regenerative medicine, quantum computing, autonomous and cognitive vehicle technologies. So last year we heard during the COVID pandemic, we heard from many manufacturers that they were faced with supply chain disruptions. As a result, increasingly, we are seeing a lot more manufacturers looking to insource productions of the entire product line or components of it, or critical components that they feel that they need to secure the production. So those might be the kind of projects that that's suitable for this program. Next slide. How to apply. Okay, so applications are accepted on a continuous basis. So we don't have like a cutoff time. We encourage you to visit our website and review the applicant guide. There's a main application form for you to provide details of your organization, your project. It's very similar to our other programming. So it's not, if you're familiar with our past programming or core programming, it's very similar form. And there is a specific one-page supplemental question form where there's only four questions, where you indicate how your project meets one or more of the program objectives. That's kind of the link to the Jobs and Growth Fund, important piece that you need to answer. You can attach additional support documentation to your application form. If you have presentation decks, financial statements, you can just put them, attach them to the main application form. When you're ready, press the submit button on the form and it will go straight into our system. We encourage you to contact us if you have any questions before you submit your application. Or if you're not sure how to scope up your projects, reach out to us as well. Tell us what you're looking for and we'll help help you scope the right project size with the right milestones and deliverables so that you could submit a more high quality application. Now the review process. Once we receive your application, you will have an assigned project officer, and he or she will contact you to work with you through the assessment process. The process could take weeks or months, depending on the volume and complexity of the cases. Regardless, you can always get updates through your assigned project officer on the status of your project. Now, our assessment would include financial due diligence, as well as markets and industry analysis. We assess the organization and the management team's capacity to undertake the project. We review benefits to your organization, your community, and we assess the likelihood of your projected outcomes, as well as project risk, as well as your, and that's the most important part, your risk mitigation strategy. Next slide. This is the website link to that has all the information on the program, the Jobs and Growth Fund, program guidelines, form, application guide. And if you have any questions, at the next slide, we have contact information here for you. You can reach out to myself directly, to Eva directly, or you can contact us through, if you have very general questions, for quick questions, you can email we have two inboxes. One general one that answers all the FedDev programming questions, or one that's specific to programs that are for businesses. That's all from me.
Right. Laura, thank you as always. That was a great summary and a lot of information. We do have the slides. We will share the slides. I will maybe take the slides down shortly. You know, I'll leave them up while we do some of the Q&A. We did have had a number of questions come in through the chat, so I'm just going to go through a couple of those. Are you able to walk us through the mechanism, the funding mechanism for for-profit and not-for-profit? Again, I'll go back to the slide, but there was a couple of questions about the terms, you know, interest-free, interest-free repayable versus non-repayable. Can you just maybe go through the slide just a little bit again?
Sure. Yeah. So for all businesses, including Indigenous businesses, those are all repayable.
Yeah.
Okay, so all contributions to businesses and Indigenous business all repayable. It's just that the funding support would be percentage is different. So for businesses, it's up to 50%. We would try to negotiate the right amounts then and the kind of right, not necessarily going to give you 50% that you ask for. We might look at a smaller, lower amount that will still make the project help the project advance. Our goal is to not really support all the large projects and kind of empty the nest, if you will. Like, we want to spread it around as much as we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
For not-for-profits, like, that's obviously non-repayable from the not-for-profit. And for third-party delivery by the non-profit organizations, Treasury Board rules is that if the contribution, like, say if it's distributing funding from a not-for-profit into a business, if it's under $100,000, that's non-repayable. If it's over 100,000, that could be repayable back.
Okay, that's helpful. And so really, the principle is, well, you pay back the principal. There's no interest on it, and I think I heard you say terms of starting repayments in about a year, but it could be 4 years, could be 8 years, could be negotiable as opposed to the ramp up of those payments. Is that correct?
Yep, correct.
Very good. And between you, me, and the 52 other people on this call, what's the bite size that you prefer right now of project? I mean, I know some programs it's, hey, the minimum is, there is no minimum, but really we kind of want it to be 300,000 or 500,000 or $1 million. Do you have any sense of what the appetite is for, for a startup with that's looking for $30,000? Would that be applicable, or would that just get lost in the wash?
If a startup is looking for $30,000, we'll say
probably other programs.
So that's like a very small project, and we'll probably look at the activities. It could be the startup might be looking for one piece of equipment that will eat up the whole cost. Are we the right place to invest in a company that's looking for one piece of equipment? Not sure, right?
Yeah.
So like, we look for impact as well, right? So even though we don't have a minimum, I would say for FedDev Ontario and to worth the while, 250,000 would be the minimum size that we would look at supporting. We do have clients who of course ask for $10 million right away. They don't all necessarily going to be successful. It's very rare that we give out $10 million contributions.
My understanding is that needs to be approved by the minister, not just some folks internally. So that's it tends to be a harder one to get through when it's that size. Yeah.
So surprisingly, it doesn't matter what dollar size, it goes to the same level of scrutiny.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But of course, if it's a larger size, there's more scrutiny because it's the value for money. Like, is this a large investment? Is it going to yield the kind of results that the applicant says it is going to? So we'll dissect it a bit more.
Okay, and I've got a note here from Jenica, and I think I may have confused you, Jenica, there. So the question is sort of clear. For a non-profit, for under 100K, it's non-repayable, but for over 100K, it may be repayable. So Jenica, I believe, and Laura, correct me, that is, it is non-repayable for contributions for not-for-profits, full stop. But if you are reissuing money, basically, if you're managing the flow of money, so for example, when I was running NACO, we helped fund the creation of angel groups. If we were then, we got money from the government and we gave money to angel groups. If we had issued more than 100K, that would have to be repaid. So it's really how you are using the money, but overall to your organization, it is a non-repayable contribution. Is that correct, Laura?
Yeah.
I spent much time in government circles, I think. Other questions here. Give me 1 second. We've looked at what's surprise. What the bite size is. Any other questions from folks that we still have here? Looks like we still have a full house. We've got at least a few more minutes to address them. Jenica, I think I can unmute you. I can ask you to unmute. So go ahead.
Sorry, I just came late to this meeting, but I was just wondering, because I'm part of a nonprofit organization. So in terms of like applying for grants, like what exactly do you guys fund? Because like we're specifically looking for funding for this innovative software that we created that can really help change mental health research funding, like just the process of it. So I just want to know if I would be eligible. Like I want to know exactly what kind of projects you guys fund.
For the not-for-profits, we actually seen a variety of applications that come in. I would connect you directly with one of our not-for-profit team members to go over like what your plans are. So it's probably not best to answer here, but you can connect with somebody directly to kind of go over your plans.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great. Thank you.
And I'll at the end, I'll flip back to the contact information there. Steve, I see you're unmuted there. Do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. I was curious about whether it would be appropriate to fill out the application form, like apply, saying, hey, this is the type of partner that we're looking at. And then FedDev might help us find the partner, because, you know, with Trellis, the transit system, it's really tricky with the money all dragging into LRTs. How do we find a partner that actually wants a green, you know, sustainable transit? Would that be appropriate? We just fill out the form, because it sounds like a really good program.
Or you can reach out to us ahead of time, and we can see if we already have other partners in our pipeline that in our ecosystem that we talk to, and see if you can kind of advance your discussions with partners before you apply. That might be a better solution for you.
And Steve, this is one of the reasons why we love Laura and the CleanTech ecosystem. She actually plays in the ecosystem and is a great partner, and actually does make those sorts of connections where appropriate. So I'm going to echo her statement there that her and her team are actually very helpful in that. So can your IRAP ITA be, if you've got an IRAP ITA set up. I'm always surprised at what networks they're able to pull out. And obviously you can always give me a call, help where I can.
Sure. I'll give yourself thanks.
I had another question about eligible project costs, salaries for personnel doing R&D work, other work, legal costs, partnering costs, agreements. What would be, I guess, are there any ineligible costs that would stand out, Laura, or sort of what's on the table, what's not?
So we have 4 main categories of costs. So on the capital side, we have equipment acquisition, and we have leasehold improvements. So leasehold improvement will have to be associated with the equipment purchases. So we're not looking for like just to renovate any facility, right? It has to tie to the project objectives. On the non-capital side, it will be incremental labor. So if part of the project is to staff up and increase your business development team to reach new markets, for example, those incremental labor would be eligible within the project.
That would be the jobs and growth side of things, I suppose. So yeah,
exactly.
On that. No, that makes perfect sense.
But if they're not labor, if they're like expertise, you have to engage with recruitment firm, or if there's legal fees, or there are costs associated with business development or market development. Those could also be included under the other non-capital costs.
Okay, good.
Now, we don't support land acquisition or building a building, but we could support inside the building leasehold improvement. Yeah.
Okay, good. Because one of the big questions I've been getting from folks is on the adoption side, paying for the legals around the partnering, the sort of in software terms, basically the service level agreement, how you're going to partner, who's going to do what to whom, what costs are going to be incurred by which party. All that sort of work would be, because it is incremental to that project, would be applicable, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm actually going to ask Farouk's question here. Would R&D on a product that will have a positive environmental impact be eligible? So if they're basically doing product development or continued product development, would that be eligible?
Yes, we do support R&D costs, but it has to tie to one of the 4 objectives of the program.
putting my shred hat on, talk to your shred advisor on that too, because you don't want to cannibalize your shreddable expenses. So make sure you're careful about which costs you apply for government funding for versus not. But we can have that chat some other time. Question from Julie. We have what factors contribute to the repayment terms? There's a reference to 1-year grace period and up to 8-year term. How do you weigh out the different terms with a company in each different situation?
It's really about the financial capacity of the company, like when we talk to them or when we at the approval stage, and what the expenses will look like throughout the project, or when they execute on commercialization or scaling up. So maybe they finished the project already, it's successful, they're able to acquire, X number of new clients in a new country, for example. But they need to incur more costs to do certain things so that they could get to the next step. So the general expenses, is still going to continue to climb post-project implementation period into the repayment period. So we'll kind of look at those factors, like what is the right, like how much can the company afford without hurting them?
Okay, and a corollary of that's a question from me. Don't blame me, but it is from me. We've had a few interesting exogenous shocks in the last couple of years, and say we've got a loan agreement that was for 4 years. Is there any flexibility for either speeding up or spacing out those once they're agreed to? Should a certain pandemic drag on, or various different other factors come to play? And speeding up might be an option as well. Is there flexibility there?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example of last year, like during the pandemic, like we had a sizable receivables portfolio, hundreds of companies. So we knew everybody was at a standstill. So we gave each of the companies a 6 months freeze on payments. After the 6 months, surprisingly, a lot of companies decided that we're okay now. We can start our repayment again. And then there are some companies that, okay, I think what the repayment term is not going to work for us anymore because the business outlook for the remainder of the year is still abysmal. So at that point, we would renegotiate to come up with a revised repayment schedule that works for the company. So we're always flexible to do that with our clients. It's not like, we have a hammer and you shall pay. We're always flexible to work with you. Our role is to support business growth. So if by forcing you to repay at a certain amount that's going to hurt you, we don't. That's opposite of what we want to do. So accelerating repayment, we've seen that as well. And that could be for a variety of reasons. It could be that a company is getting acquired and they want to clean off their balance sheets before they get acquired, and they have the cash to do so. Or it could be part of the acquisition. The acquisition will pay for the retirement of the liabilities. So we've seen those happen as well.
Okay, and I've got one here. It's a sort of follow on in terms of terms. The dreaded personal guarantee. Is that something that you typically look for securing the loan?
Not personal guarantee. We're not a bank, so we don't look for personal guarantee. But like for a startup, for example, if there is a parent company, we may look for a parent company to provide a corporate guarantee.
Okay, great.
Okay. So that is an option, yeah.
Okay, great. It seems like the questions are starting to slow down. Any other questions right now? I would say raise your hand and I'll try and unmute you here. Yeah. Otherwise, I think we're probably pretty close to wrapping up. We're at.
And I just want to do another plug for Lynn on the EDC investments in the CleanTech matching program. If you were able to raise VC funding from EDC and other VC partners, and that's your equity, that could be part of your matching towards project financing for your Jobs and Growth Fund project.
Mm-hmm. And On that, Lynn, you know, the standard FedDev programs, are they, business scale up and those are still at play right now as well?
They are, but they have less budget than, for example, the Jobs and Growth Fund, because that takes priority and has a strong focus, and we have dedicated more resources towards the new program. So this is actually one of, I'm forgetting, 6 programs that were launched in the month of July alone for all the regional development agencies. Jobs and Growth is one of the biggest programs and most interesting for businesses. There is a separate program for aerospace. So aerospace relief and recovery initiative, a regional recovery initiative. That's just, you know, for the aerospace sector. Again, has a greening of economy consideration there. That's one of the objectives. And then we have other programs on supporting tourism, supporting community infrastructure, and major festivals and events.
I have another question here actually on where one should apply. So given there are multiple RDAs, regional development agencies across Canada, if a company has impact, so their project would be in, making up a random example, out west, though I know there's a few new development agencies out there, they're splitting it up. Well, I'll say WD because I can't remember the new names, WD and ACOA, so Atlantic Canada and out west. Would they, but the company has headquartered here, would they apply to FedDev or a project with WD and a project with ACOA? What would be the process there?
So is where the project activity will take place. So it doesn't matter where the company is headquartered within Canada, is where the project activities will take place. So it could be an Alberta headquarter company, but they have an office in Ontario and they're expanding or doing something there that's related to Jobs and Growth Fund, and they should apply to FedDev for that purpose.
Okay, so it's where the impact is going to be happening. Okay,
yeah,
great. That was an important one. Thank you very much there. Okay, with that, if I do not see any hands raised in the next couple of seconds, I'm going to do a few things here, which involves scrolling. I am going to do another shout out to Lynn in absentia, and hopefully the hair emergency is going well. But I really would encourage folks to sign up for CleanTech Export Week. It is all virtual, and the app, as I say, I think it was Huva, was actually quite useful last year to help with networking. So definitely worth tuning in. Then we will probably, as CleanTech North, have some programming around that time as well, or OCTIA, the Ontario CleanTech Industry Association. Speaking of OCTIA, I'll send the link out afterwards. I don't have a slide for it, but we did put out with Canada CleanTech a policy platform for CleanTech that has been sent to all political parties across the spectrum. Highly recommend that you check those out, and if you agree with the recommendations there, send in your endorsement, because we are, as I say, sending that out to all parties, hoping that we get some focus on that in what we suspect is going to be an election this fall. Which actually brings me to another question, Laura. Yeah, I know, yeah, I had to ask it. If that does happen, what happens to funding that's in process or applications that are in process if the writ does drop and there is an election?
In any event there's an election, we continue to take in new applications, we continue to assess and work with clients. It's just that decisions will not be made until a new government is formed. Okay, so it's a decision part that's parked. The assessment part will continue on.
Yeah, so go in with all the materials and try to get it done, your application done as fast as possible, or work through it during with Laura and her team during the election period, so that you can hit the ground running as soon as there is a reformed government. And with that, I think I will simply say thank you to all of our partners. Thank you to everybody that joined us today. Our partners, Flow Ventures, EDC, Swann Law, City of Toronto, Center for Social Innovation Climate Ventures Program, and the Open Data Society. We'll try to cut this video to make it look good and put it online shortly. I will share links to slides and all of that shortly as well within the next week. If you do have any questions, I know Laura and her colleagues' information is there, and Lynn's is in the slides as well. So with that, thank you very much for joining us. If you got any questions, reach out to them, reach out to me, and have a great day, and stay cool out there. It's a little warm. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.